Hi, everybody. It is 1 o'clock. Let us go ahead and get started. Welcome back to the Parenting with Goddard webinar series. Today, we are covering a topic that I know every parent is surely familiar with: big emotions. You know what I'm talking about: anger, frustration, those uncontrollable meltdowns that usually occur at the most inopportune times, far too often in public settings. So, where do these emotions come from? And how do you help your child manage them before, during, and after they experience them? So, our experts here today are going to provide some answers and share some actionable guidance for all of you. Now, for those of you who are new to our webinars, welcome. After today's session, I encourage you to visit our YouTube channel to check out our previous webinars covering a plethora of topics. We have kindergarten readiness, early literacy, and one called Navigating Challenging Childhood Behaviors that I specifically wanted to call out because it tackles, among other challenging behaviors, bedtime battles. And we received dozens and dozens of questions for today about bedtime challenges. So we're not going to address that topic here today. So if you are interested, after today's discussion, be sure to check out that session again on our YouTube channel. All right, let's cover a few quick housekeeping items for those watching with us live today. If you have any questions, you can ask them via the Q&A feature, though I won't promise that we will get to everything. We will send you this recording afterwards. So as I mentioned, it'll be available on YouTube, but we'll also send it to you directly. So if you miss something, do not worry. Also, this is very exciting. We're doing something new today. We have giveaways. Now, I'm not going to give too much away now, but be sure to stick around until the end. Trust me, you do not want to miss your opportunity to walk away with some great items from Goddard and from our friends at Slumberkins. So with that, let me do some very quick introductions. I am Chaz Kurtz, your webinar host, PR manager here at Goddard. As I share on every one of these webinars, I love these because I get to take these nuggets home, where my wife and I have a 10-year-old daughter, a 7-year-old son, and a daughter who will be turning 4. Yeah, 4. That's hard to believe, on Friday. We are joined once again today by our Chief Academic Officer here at Goddard, Dr. Lauren Loquasto. Dr. Lauren is a widely published author and lecturer with more than 2 decades of early childhood education experience, including curriculum development, evaluation, and implementation, as well as teaching and consulting in the fields of preschool, special needs, and elementary education. And I mentioned Slumberkins earlier. We have 2 very special guests with us today. You see them there on your screen, the co-founders of Slumberkins. So we have Callie Oriard, who is a co-founder and the Chief Therapeutic Officer at Slumberkins. She is a mother of 2, dual masters in marriage and family therapy and school counseling. And she's worked as a school counselor and family therapist at a K-12 school. So naturally, she's going to have some great insights for us here today. We are also joined by Callie Christensen, co-founder as well, and the Chief Brand Officer at Slumberkins. She is a mother of 3, masters in teaching with endorsements in elementary education and special education. She has worked as a special education teacher in a therapeutic day treatment school, as well as in an elementary school. I could tell you all about Slumberkins, but that would be a little bit silly, I think, when we have the co-founders here with us. So Callie and Kelly, why don't we start off by having you tell us a little bit about your awesome company?
Hello. Yes. Hi. We're so excited to be here. And I will just share, this is such a full circle moment for us. We were Goddard parents. About 6 years ago, we were taking our little ones to preschool at the Goddard School here in Vancouver, Washington. And we're just so excited to join on this platform and share Slumberkins with you all, which, if you don't know Slumberkins, we are an emotional learning brand for families. It really was born out of the need that we recognize as educators to really put tangible tools that are easy to implement into the hands of parents before a child got to be in the school age, where we were the intervention specialists in all things mental and behavioral health. So back then, we didn't know really how to start what we really wanted to create. So it started out very much as a handmade endeavor here in the Pacific Northwest, and it's just grown to now include 15 characters that each tackle different emotional skills. And we'll be narrowing in on something that we call our hammerhead creature today, that talks all about emotion regulation and big feelings like mad.
Fantastic. Well, let's keep going here. And why don't we just dive right into our questions? I know we have a lot to cover today. So Callie, I would love to start with you. A foundational question, and that is, why do young children have such intense emotional reactions?
Yeah, it's hard to remember and imagine what's going on in the mind of young children, but developmentally, the around so when children are infants, they are really looking to you as the primary caregiver for the ability to regulate. We call that co-regulation. So through attachment, through those moments of cuddling and snuggling and responding to their needs, whether it's diapering, feeding, playing, just interacting with eye gaze, those are your foundational moments of like helping your child understand that you are there to support them in regulating their emotions. And as they get out of infancy and into this kind of younger toddler and preschool age, it's all about the dance between supporting with that and also helping them build the skills to start to regulate their own emotions, which becomes a whole big project that goes on through adolescence, because our brains are developing through children's brains are developing through adolescence. And emotional regulation, as many of us know, even from meeting adults, we all need to be constantly working on this. And it's something that's really supported by primary caregivers first and foremost, and then solidified and supported by hopefully schools and teachers and other people in your child's life.
Fantastic. And I think then why don't we move to Lauren here to dive a little bit deeper. So Dr. Lauren, at what age do we typically see kind of emotional regulation skills really start to develop in young children? And what exactly does that development typically look like?
So I think Kelly queued this up nicely. So in infancy, it's about co-regulation. Infants, newborns cannot regulate their own emotions. They're looking to a caregiver to provide comfort. But by the end of that first year of life, we do see infants attempt to self-soothe. Maybe they seek a pacifier, suck on their thumb, etc. We move into the toddler year, 12 to 24 months. Again, we're seeing a lot of big emotions, and we also see toddlers try at times to self-regulate. They might turn away from things that are overwhelming, might actually turn and cling to a caregiver or a parent, might seek a lovey item of sorts. But really, it's around age 2 to 3 that we begin to see young children use emotion vocabulary that they've been taught. Words like sad, mad, scared are pretty common words that we'd say. And it's also when we can begin to teach young children how to begin to attempt to regulate emotions. Things like taking a deep breath, walking away, hands are not for hitting, and other very simple cues that can help the child begin to identify what they're feeling and then begin to practice ways of regulating or managing that emotion. But as Kelly said, it takes time. I have 4 teenagers in one house. They're still learning how to regulate their emotions. It takes a long time because that area of the brain doesn't fully develop until age 20, 21 or longer. And it has to be constantly nurtured and supported. So really the preschool years are that prime foundational time to begin establishing those skills. But we want to start even earlier, even with infants, labeling emotions, as I'm sure we'll get to later in our talk today.
Fantastic. And I want to keep spreading the wealth here. So Callie, I'm going to come to you with this question. And that is, what are the most common triggers for emotional dysregulation? For example, is it stress? Is it overstimulation? Is it something I'm not thinking of off the top of my head right now? So Callie would love your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm thinking back to the preschool stage, a lot of times it's important to recognize that a child's emotional state is not separate from their primary caregivers. We talked about that attachment piece, but then as kids are going, they're really tuned into our own emotions as parents. So something to just recognize is if you're overwhelmed and stressed and anxious and triggered, your kid is picking up on that and probably mirroring or experiencing some of those same feelings. But also when they're away from us in places like school or just in our daily routines at home, some of the biggest triggers can be transitions that aren't structured, and also expectations from the kid's standpoint, not knowing what to expect, or them feeling disappointed that something didn't go the way that they were going to expect. Those are just some of the two that came to mind for me on this question, and can sometimes also be very preventable. It's why when you're in a classroom setting, you see a lot of like visual routine schedules. That's why we created a visual routine schedule to really help structure and give kids more autonomy in their daily routines to avoid meltdowns.
That's great. And I think one thing you said there was so important, that kids are tuned into our emotions as adults and as parents. So keeping that in mind is always really, really important. So I want to transition a little bit. So I think that was a great kind of foundation setting for this discussion. But as I look through the questions coming in here from many of our parents, and then the hundreds and hundreds of questions that were submitted in advance of today's discussion, if there's one thing that parents hope to get out of this webinar, it's simply this: what are some practical tools or techniques to use in the heat of a meltdown? As many parents have put it, what de-escalation or redirection techniques actually work. So Lauren, I would love to start with you first on this one, and then Kelly and Callie, maybe we can transition to you afterwards. So start with you, Lauren.
So every parent wants to know, what is the magic tool, the magic trick, the one thing I can do to de-escalate, stop the tantrum? And the reality is there's not one thing you can do. There's not a one size fits all. But here are a couple tools and tricks and techniques to think about in the heat of a meltdown, the heat of a tantrum. Imagine yourself, you're walking through the grocery store, your child has a meltdown. And first of all, we've all been there. All of us have been there. The most important thing to realize is your child's emotionality is high. Emotions are high, behavior is high, stress is high. In the immediacy, you want to match that with the opposite. And this is easier said than done, because you're feeling embarrassed, you're feeling shame, you might be angry, frustrated. But as your child is having high emotionality and high behavior, you want to meet that with low emotionality and low behavior. And that means stopping, talking in a very slow and quiet tone, and essentially counterbalancing the extreme with an extreme. For many children, just doing that will knock them off center enough that they'll pause and observe what their parent or caregiver is doing. Like, I'm screaming and yelling and throwing a tantrum. Why is mom talking so quietly and slowly and moving so slowly? Sometimes that's enough to de-escalate. But oftentimes in the heat of those moments, the emotionality has already hit a peak. And the tendency is to want to punish or to scold or to curb. And oftentimes that can only lead to heightened emotion. One of the best things to do in that moment is to pause. Give yourself time to pause, and give your child a moment to work through whatever it is that they are going through. And that might mean sitting down beside them in the aisle and letting them have that moment. If a child has a pause in it, it's also a perfect opportunity to begin to what I call sportscast, or begin to express to the child objectively what you're seeing. I see that your hands are clenched in tight fists. I hear your voice is really loud, and I hear that you are yelling that you want whatever it is. It sounds to me like you are feeling frustrated. And trying in that moment to sportscast the behaviors and pair them with an emotional vocabulary term, whether the child latches onto it in that moment or not, at least can begin to help identify what I'm physiologically feeling in my body and the word to pair with it. Because oftentimes the child is feeling the physiological, the hot face, the heat, the anger, they don't know how to pair that, and that can lead to other emotions like fear or shame or embarrassment, even in the child. So they're having this kind of heightened cycle. So attempting to put some labeling to it. The other thing, depending upon the situation, can be to try to, if it is safe, to simply not give it a lot of attention. If you're nearby and there's things you can do to busy yourself, or you're clearly observing your child within proximity and keeping a safe distance, but you can busy yourself, showing them that right now they're having their moment and you're doing your thing, whatever that might be, writing in a journal, taking deep breaths, but begin to model some of that emotion regulation that you're hoping them to see. We know there's the old phrase, do as I say, not as I do. Doesn't work with children. They're always going to do what you do. So in that moment, try to be a strong model of what you want to see the child doing. Taking deep breaths, hands together, eyes, whatever it might be, to kind of help them curb through the emotionality in the moment.
Wow, there was a lot there. I was taking some notes. I love the counter the high emotionality and high behavior with the low emotionality and low behavior, kind of counterbalancing the extreme with the extreme, as you put it. Pausing, sportscasting, not giving a lot of attention, modeling, all great tactics that parents can employ in these situations. Kelly and Callie, did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we move on?
Yeah, I would love to add to that. Just, having worked in both the schools and then having my own kids that had big feelings at this age as well. I really appreciate that layout of those skills and, tactics, because those are exactly what we used in the school as well, right? When I was going into classrooms or working with kids, right? Counterbalancing, showing empathy, joining with the child around like what's going on for them to help them label can really help de-escalate. And honestly, what I noticed is, as a school counselor or as the nice person or the nice teacher, right? Kids really often respond to that. And so what I noticed when I became a parent, though, and when it was my own child, I was like expert at doing that in the schools and, in classrooms. But when it became my own kids and my own reactions, that's where I noticed the rub for myself, because even though I knew those skills and I knew what I could do, somehow it didn't work with my own kids, because I think, similar to what Callie was saying, they could feel my internal state. And even though I was saying the right things, like internally, I was having a freak out, because we're like, like what we said, I'm feeling ashamed, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm like, let's just get you out of here. Like, what can I bribe you with? Right? Like, I'm falling back on all the things that just try to get that tantrum away as fast as possible. And I think a lot of parents feel that way. We see those tools and we know that they're available. And then in the heat of the moment, they're somehow become inaccessible to us because we are so overwhelmed. So I would second what you were saying about really taking that moment to notice yourself first and foremost. If you're in a place where you can start implementing those things because you're like, oh, I see this, I'm not attached to it, I'm not having big feelings about it, I can meet that in a way that's authentically true for me, go for it. If you are internally spinning out and feeling overwhelmed, like you want to snap or you want to, rely on something else, also give yourself permission to call it. Walk out of the grocery store, get in the car, cope in a way that you need to like get back to a stable place yourself, and then start engaging in those same things. I've had to pick up my son who's having a full tantrum and just walk out the door and back into the car. Like, we're going to try it again another time. And that's not a failure. And that's not, like you've done something wrong. It's really, like what we're saying, putting your oxygen mask on first, making sure that you're grounded. And the more we start to realize that, it is through modeling that we're going to teach these skills more than laying it out or teaching explicitly, that it is you that is going to set the tone for how that works, that you can give yourself permission to do that. And also really try to find that grounded space for yourself, and be gentle with yourself, because there's no perfect way to do this. And in the heat of the moment, the tantrum is not the time to be teaching. We're trying to get down to a base level and get everybody back to calm.
Love that, Kelly. I hear some, as a parent, give yourself some grace. You're not alone when these situations happen, certainly. And they're never fun, but you'll get through them, certainly. Callie, I'm going to move to you for this next question, just kind of diving a little bit deeper on kind of the phrases or language that are most helpful or potentially unhelpful when a child is upset and experiencing these big emotions. As one parent asks, I'm going to read here, my child gets more upset when I validate her feelings. I can see you're very frustrated. So no matter what I say, she gets more amped up. Should I just say nothing? So Callie, would love your thoughts on this one.
Oh boy, that reminds me of my daughter Cora, who's 8. Like you try to like reason and have a conversation with her, and it just spirals to the point where I've learned to just take space, actually don't engage verbally with her, and come back around once we're both in a level place. I had to engage. This is kind of a story, but I was at her brother's football game with her. Of course, there was a candy stand. She wanted candy. Of course, I was saying no candy. And it spiraled to a place where the mother next to me, she was so ridiculously whining and would not and nothing would pull her out of it. She was just dead set on getting what she wanted. And the mom next to me turned to me. I didn't know her. And she goes, you're doing a great job. And I wanted to hug that mom because I was in my own full meltdown. I contemplated leaving the football game. Like it was just terrible. So I just share that because we are all there in it with you all also. And so I think for, when I think about what's worked a lot with my daughter is not really trying to get into that conversation then, or even sportscasts. I've tried it. It works with my boys, doesn't work with my daughter. The things that do seem to de-escalate her specifically, and that worked with a lot of my students, was the phrase, it makes sense you're feeling this way. And then just leave it at that. Just like, or I believe you. And just leave it at that. And then just walk away and take space, make sure they're safe and in a safe space, and then come back. And then I just have to recognize, some kids, a lot of my kids were neurodivergent when I was teaching, and some of them did not do well with any verbal interaction. And a lot of times we would just take space, and preschool, it's really young, to try to write out the different perspectives and what's going on, and trying to get to the emotions underneath the behavior. But my best trick for the younger kids was literally to take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and I would draw my perspective as the teacher, or I do this with my daughter, my perspective of what's going on, and then let my daughter draw a scenario of her perspective of what's going on, and just externalize the situation to then be able to come back and talk about it and problem solve together. But yeah, it's hard. It's really hard, especially when you find yourself in those struggles. And of course, you don't want to give in to end it. And that will end it if you just give in. But I will say, I think parents in these days, I was just felt so supported by a stranger mom at a football game because we're in this struggle together.
Fantastic. You had some great tidbits there, Callie. I love it. It makes sense you're feeling this way, and I believe you. Really powerful and short, pithy statements. Also, I didn't know you were bringing props, so I love you have your prop and the idea of your perspective and your child's perspective. Great guidance there. I am going to move on here and read a question that was submitted. I'm going to read this verbatim. It's a long one, but I think it's a great one. So our 4.5-year-old will sometimes have a big, sad reaction to something totally innocuous, or even something he was excited about moments before, such as super excited to go to the playground, but once we get there, big tears and I don't want to go. This sounds familiar to me, so maybe that's part of the reason I picked this one. Back to the question. We're pretty good at being understanding and help him calm down and feel safe and heard, but in the aftermath, have a lot of trouble helping him to describe what he felt and why. All of our why or what are you feeling questions or naming emotions to help him identify what he was feeling are met with, I don't know. So my question is twofold. What can we expect a child this age to be able to identify and express? And how can we help him relay the series of events and emotions that led to the big reaction so that we can help him understand and develop strategies to cope? So there was a lot there. Lauren, let's start with you for this one. Dr. Lauren.
Sure. So first of all, great question. And you're asking the right question. And your child's response of I don't know is authentic. He doesn't. He probably doesn't know. So let me unpack that a little bit and tell you why I'm saying that. If you think about what's happening for the young child, there's a lot of brain development taking place. In fact, I would think of it almost as children are emotional explorers. They're encountering new things. I don't know what this feeling is. I've got physiological responses and I react. And then things change. At the same time, you have that same young child really trying hard to establish independence and autonomy. They want to do it themselves. They want to be able to take on that new situation and take on that new skill, which oftentimes is going to be met with frustration. So when those two things collide, it's why you get those mood swings or those emotional counterbalances that are happening back and forth with the child. And you're doing exactly the right thing, asking them about it and trying to talk through it. But that's a very complex self-reflection skill to have to go back and mentally, for one, recall what happened step by step by step, but also what was I feeling at each of those different processes. So I encourage you to take a different process and do what we call social scripting. And rather than talk about your child and your child's experience, tell a story. So you gave the example of your child wanting to go to the park, being excited about it, getting there and then being sad and perhaps a little bit afraid or a little bit nervous. So tell a story instead. So, sometimes, Johnny wants to go to the park and Johnny's so excited. He's excited to go to the park and to play with his friends and to play on the different playground equipment. And he's feeling really excited about that. I can tell that he's excited because he's smiling and he's laughing and he keeps asking us when it's time to go. When his mom and dad walk him to the park, Johnny sees a lot of new friends that he doesn't know. And while he's still excited, he might be a little bit nervous to meet new children and to have to ask them what their name is and introduce himself, and feeling nervous is okay. So just kind of walk back through a different situation, take your child out of it, and essentially tell them a story where you're attempting to label different emotions that might take place. Depending upon your child, you might pause and say, have you ever felt like that? And see if the child can make a connection to it. They might or they might not, and that's okay. But continue to help them kind of understand how different situations can trigger different feelings. The other thing to think about is rewind the entire situation back. If your child is going to be in a new, unfamiliar, less comfortable situation, it's important to build what we call an anticipatory set. What can you expect when? So for example, for a lot of your children, they're going to start back to preschool. So being able to say, in the morning, we're going to wake up and we're going to do the following routine, and using emotion words. And we're going to be excited because we're going to see our friends. And we're going to be excited because we're going to, eat an extra special breakfast. When we get to school, we're going to walk in and walk them exactly through step by step what's going to happen, and label different situations that they might encounter and how they might feel using emotional vocabulary. The reason why that's important is your child can then have an idea of what to expect in that situation, what they might feel, and they're going to have a word to label it. Then as you're actually walking your child through that situation, first day of preschool, for example, ask them, do you remember when we talked about our first day of school? Do you remember when we talked about having an extra special breakfast? How are you feeling about that? And so guide them through a situation, but also be sensitive that there is a lot new for young children. This is an unknown world and a lot of new situations, and that balance between emotion development and autonomy, or wanting to be able to do it myself, can create an ebb and flow, which is going to trigger a lot of emotions. It's very normal. Keep trying to have the conversation, keep trying to unpack it, but consider taking your child out of it and talking about it in third person as though you're reading a child a storybook. I'm using many of the same emotion vocabulary words in that.
There was a lot of great guidance there, Dr. Lauren. I'm not going to go through it all, but I wrote this one down because I loved it. Children are emotional explorers. That is so very true. Callie, I want to come to you with this next question. What should a parent do after a tantrum? So we've been discussing a lot about kind of in the heat of the moment, but let's fast forward a little bit, hopefully fairly quickly, to once everyone has calmed down. What can parents do to help their child learn from the experience and potentially take steps to help avoid this happening again in the future?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I think gets breezed over a lot and something that we try to bring focus on is about repair. So when I became a therapist, one of the most important tools that I had in my toolbox, working with even adults and kids, was to take risks in doing what Dr. Lauren was saying, right? Saying, oh, I wonder if you're feeling this way, or this is what was going on. You might encounter this, right? And when you go through a tantrum moment, when there's this disconnection because maybe you're overwhelmed with the feelings that they're having, it's not really rational, you're not going to go along with it. It might have triggered you to a place where maybe you showed up in a way that you didn't want to, or you were, stern or yelled or something like this. So repair is the way to come back together and create this emotional safety and grounding between you and your child. And at the base level, having that grounding and connection when things have calmed down is so important, because it's the soil that you're growing the seeds of learning from. And when there's emotional safety, because you are able to repair with your child, then you can really be moving forward in a way where they're able to see you model this. So that might be apologizing. I don't know. We created a product called Repair Bear, which really gives parents a script for apologizing to their child and helping model that accountability. Because I know my parents never apologized to me. It was sort of a different time, because I think parenting practices have changed and focusing more on this emotional realm, right? Like behaviors aren't acceptable, and we're going to hold boundaries, but in the emotional realm, right? You're always loved. I'm always here for you. And if I did something that made you doubt that, I'm sorry. And how do we find that place? So once we have that base back of connection with each other, then there's engagement and interest in building, learning, understanding each other's perspectives. And so going towards your child, maybe recounting, telling a story, like Dr. Lauren said, like, we created a product called The Feels that helps kids really look at feelings in that emotional explorer way, which is, if a sad feeling comes and gets really big, what does that sad feeling need? So instead of saying, what do you need, which is a big, who knows? I don't know what I need sometimes when I'm sad, right? We externalize it by using story, by using characters and saying, wow, this is a big sad feeling. What do sad feelings need? And then somehow it feels easier to look at a sad feeling or look at an angry feeling and have a child respond, well, they need a hug, or they need space. They need to go stomp their feet, right? And we have lots of books that sort of build that language and shared language around coping skills and sort of understanding what feelings need and how we can help meet those needs in an externalized way. But yes, really that repair and reconnection moment as the baseline to then start going into strategies and really that connection piece with each other to get that stable foundation back again.
Love it. Repair and reconnect. So important. I'm going to shift a little bit here to I'll call it kind of a group of topics I'm going to combine that we got a lot of questions about here, both today and in advance. And that is life changes. So moving to a new home, divorce, welcoming a new sibling, for example, and how these can lead to emotional dysregulation. One parent shared challenges involving dealing with emotions of moving from a different state and adjusting. And she actually said her daughter's favorite episode of Slumberkins is When Things Change. She said it was perfect for the big move. So I'd love some guidance that you have for parents managing these big changes and the emotions that accompany them. Callie, why don't we start with you? And then Kelly and Dr. Lauren, if you have anything to add after Callie, please do so.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just so happy to hear that episode really resonated. That was our whole intent, was to create these episodes that really can be used as tools to support in moments like that. And, change can be so difficult. And I think for myself, I recognize I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. I love to stay in a happy place. I love to look ahead at what's good about changes. And I think a lot of times, having been through a divorce myself, I had to really and a move and all of that, I really had to learn how to allow my kids to feel the grief that comes on the other side of big changes, that they're sitting in the sadness of the grief. So if you're moving from a different state, the grief of leaving that community, your friends, the family that you built there, leaving even the house that was so familiar and the school. And then, if it's a divorce, the grief of that family unit, and even if the divorce was a positive thing that needed to happen, but still for a kid's reality, like their world just changed completely. And so I think as a parent, I really had to learn to allow for co-regulation and allow the harder feelings, the sad feelings, the mad feelings, the really big grief feelings to really come in and play a part in the processing those big changes. And then we were able to really focus on some of the new positive things. But if you just try to skip over the hard things and focus on the positive, that's when things just, then the behaviors start to pop up down the road.
Love that. Kelly or Dr. Lauren, anything else to add to what Callie shared there?
Sure, Chaz, I'd love to add something. So this is actually part of what I'd call, big conversations with little children. Sometimes we assume, especially in the preschool years, in the 0 to 5 years, that these big topics are over the heads of young children. And I'm talking about things like certainly death or illness, divorce. Even with very young children, it's important that we have a conversation and don't avoid topics. Young children are always watching, and they're also always listening. And sometimes we as adults think that we can skirt around something or not discuss it because of the child's age, developmental understanding, and certainly to an extent, the depth of the conversation can be limited. But when we avoid topics, young children may actually internalize the situation, think that they were the cause of something or that something's being shielded from them. And that can create senses of distrust or a kind of lack of security. So it is important that we do address the topics. Talk with children very simply, very matter-of-factly about life changes. Ask them how they're feeling and pause. Give them time to think, to process, to react, and also be prepared that their reactions or their emotional labels might not be what you expect, which is because of their limited life experience. But don't avoid the conversation. Young children are far more aware than we give them credit for, and we don't want to unintentionally create anxiety by talking around children or excluding them, especially in big life changes, as Callie was discussing, that do directly affect the lives of the child.
Fantastic. So don't skip over the tough emotions and focus on the happy stuff Callie shared. And then Dr. Lauren, don't avoid these difficult conversations and topics altogether. Really, really great guidance. Dr. Lauren, let's stick with you here. And let's go to kind of the other side of meltdowns and what parents can do to prevent them before they occur. We've tackled this a little bit, but let me be specific here. How do you teach a child to regulate their emotions when things don't go exactly their way, don't go exactly the way they desired, or when they become overstimulated? So lessons that we can teach ahead of time to help prevent the meltdown from occurring in the first place. So Dr. Lauren, let's start with you. And then Kelly or Callie, feel free to jump in.
So it starts with having those early lessons about emotions and how we're feeling. And with young children, I see there are a couple questions that are posed about this as well. Even as young as infants and toddlers, labeling what you're seeing. I see that there's a tear in your eye and your lip is out and your head is down. It looks like you're feeling sad. Can you tell me why you might be feeling sad? And giving them words to talk about. Right? I see your hands clenched, you're breathing heavy. It looks like you're feeling frustrated. And you might be frustrated because you wanted to put your shoes on yourself. Is that why you're feeling frustrated? Giving the child the words, but pairing it with the physiological, what they are feeling in their bodies. Because that way the child can begin to have a physical or concrete connection between their body and their emotion is important. The other part of it is, again, social stories, talking with young children about what they can expect, having clear established routines, and talking with the child about the routine. So if we know that grocery stores, which they frequently are, might be a trigger for a tantrum when a child sees a desired food or treat that they want in that moment, talk about it in advance. We're going to go to the grocery store. We have a list. We're going to get these 12 things, but there are going to be a lot of other foods that we're going to see. But these are the things that we're going to get today. And I need your help, your special help to help us find bananas. And when we find bananas, I need you to help us count out 4 bananas. Can you do that? Give the child a task that they can focus upon, but also prepare them for what might be a distraction, what might be a trigger. Talk through it, and then give your child a chance to practice it. I'm seeing a lot of questions here about wanting to avoid situations that cause tantrums. The child has to learn by being engaged in that situation. So label the emotions, teach the emotions early, model them in yourself. Maybe you're on a phone call and the phone call drops. Even saying to your child, I am so frustrated. I was talking to grandma and then I couldn't hear her and then the call dropped and that makes me feel frustrated. Right now I'm going to walk away and take 3 deep breaths and then I'm going to call grandma back. Letting the child also see that you feel emotions. And then do social scripting, letting the child know what the situation is they're about to encounter. Give them a task in that situation to help them stay focused on something, but also give them some expectation of things that might be distracting or might be tempting in those moments, and let them know what your expectations are and give them time to practice. Just like any skill, we're not going to be successful the first time or the second time. It's going to take time, but give your child time and space to practice that.
Fantastic. That was comprehensive. Kaylee or Kelly, anything else to add there before we move on?
That was so comprehensive and so great. I would just reiterate, in the moment, in the heat of the moment is not really the time to teach the proactive skills. That's, with Slumberkins, we created it so that it's really helps empower. We know that parents are connecting with their kids mostly at bedtime. And that's why we created Slumberkins to be that, supercharge your bedtime routine with these proactive skills that you're doing in a daily practice, so that when the tantrum meltdown happens and you need to recall those tools and you have that emotional literacy built, they've already learned it, so then they can apply it. But Dr. Lauren did such a great job going over those steps, and yes, agree with all of that.
Fantastic. We are nearing the end of our time here, but I want to make sure we get a few more questions in, and then I did not forget about our special giveaway, so don't leave us yet. Dr. Lauren, I'm going to come back to you for a quick one. And that is, how do Goddard school teachers support emotional regulation in the school setting? I say a quick one. I'll let you decide if it actually is, but over to you.
Sure, it can be quick. So one of the things is emotion labeling, beginning in infancy, beginning with the youngest children that we care for in our Goddard school. So labeling what we're seeing, actually talking through it, reading fiction and nonfiction books with children, pointing out characters that are in the book and where we see evidence of different emotions or different situations, encouraging children to talk about those, and also following consistent routines and schedule so children can know what to expect and what comes next. But our Goddard school teachers are also really good about labeling emotions in themselves. The children can see a model that it's not just something that they're experiencing, that adults experience emotions too, and actually modeling and talking through not only the emotion, but also how the adult is regulating that emotion.
Great and quick. Love it. Thank you, Dr. Lauren. I'm going to ask one kind of more substantive question, and then we'll close here. But I love this one. What are some long-term benefits of helping children develop emotional language and regulation skills at a young age? So I'll leave it there. Dr. Lauren, let's start with you, and then Kelly would love your thoughts on this one as well.
Sure. So giving children language, giving them vocabulary to have conversations is key and critical. And that means not just having the word out there, but actually demonstrating it, pointing out examples of it, pointing out examples in TV shows that might be co-watched or books that are being read or situations that they're in. And the reason why it's important to start early is because then it gives children their own language to begin to script their lives and communicate their wants and needs as they're going through different situations. But it also creates the foundation to begin to develop many of those emotion regulation skills, as I'm sure Kelly's going to speak to now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Lauren. Yeah, go ahead, Callie.
That's, I mean, spot on. I completely agree with Dr. Lauren there. I think the layer that, as you know, educators, you know, turned parents and then creating Slumberkins, one piece that I think when we talk about social emotional learning, we talk about learning emotions and setting this foundation. The reason that we started Slumberkins was because there's that process that's going on between you and your child as the parent is really unique, and it's a really unique opportunity in their lifespan to set that foundation that they are, that's basically their operating system for how they see the world and see themselves in the world. This is when their core beliefs about themselves, about their capability to try something new, about their lovability, like if I make mistakes, I'm still lovable, right? Like these, it's from 0 to 7 really, that internal voice and our core beliefs are being formed up in a really substantial way. And the way that we show up for emotional regulation by doing the things that Dr. Lauren is saying, like sports casting yourself, helping them understand that all feelings are welcome, that you feel angry sometimes too. You may control it better or have coping skills, right, that you've learned, but you're going to open that book so they can see that you had to learn that too, or tell stories about yourself, or, you know, show that this is an ongoing process. And we use affirmations in all of our books to help parent and child connect around these deep core beliefs, right? That no matter what, if you make a mistake and you lose your cool and you know, pushed somebody down on the playground, are you a bad kid now? No, of course not. We're going to talk about that this happens sometimes, and we're going to talk about accountability, how to make it repair, how to make friends, what we could do differently next time, right? So all of the learning and skills come on top of this baseline connection with you and the understanding that in these early moments, the way that we're showing up is forming their understanding of how they can show up in the world, which to me has always been, I think, the most important skills of the future. When we think about AI, technology, all of the way that the world is going to look so different for our children than it did even for us, what do we need to equip them with? What do they need to be ready for? They need to be ready to move, to change, to solve problems, to work with other people, but most importantly, be aligned with themselves so that they can find their way, their gifts that they're going to bring to the world. And I think that's what we all want for our kids. And really, emotional learning, early emotional learning is what sets that foundation. I feel like I had to go back in my 30s and like go to therapy and unwind all of this. And hopefully by doing these types of things that we're talking about here and understanding the developmental process for our children, we're setting them up with this amazing, you know, fertile ground to go further and be better than we were able to be as parents.
Love it. That is fantastic. Thank you, Kelly. Before we close here, I do have a final question for everybody, and that is related to a number of questions we received from parents, and that is, what resources do you recommend when families are feeling stuck, when they need more support? Where would you recommend they go? And before I ask all of you to answer that, I just want to point out that there is a great handout here available to those of you with us today that you can check out. Also got a few questions about our YouTube channel. So I'm going to tell you again, it is the Goddard School's YouTube channel. So that is youtube.com/Goddard School. You can also go to our Goddard website. We have the Parent Resource Center with a lot of great insights, resources to help parents through any number of situations. But you guys weren't looking for my answers to this. I think you were looking for our experts. So why don't we start with you, Callie, then we'll go Kelly, then we'll go Lauren. Where can folks go for more resources?
Sure. Yeah. Slumberkins.com has a pretty robust blog with a lot of good content on it. And then I would just say all of our products are tools and resources that really support different skills parents are looking to teach, whether it's self-esteem, mindfulness, setting boundaries, confidence. There's different things for each thing. And then we also have tools like our Slumberkins show on Apple TV Plus. Each of those episodes, we have a potty training one, we have a bedtime one, there are definitely tools in those episodes. And then I'll just mention too, we also have an album that's available on all streaming platforms that we produced, that those songs are also tools to use. There's one that we collaborated on with Trevor Hall called Take a Deep Breath that is like such a great tool to use and play in the car proactively to then lean on when you need it. So we just try to make tools as accessible and easy to implement in your daily family life as much as we can.
Love it. Callie, anything else to add on the Slumberkin side?
No, I mean, we have lots of free resources on the website in the parent section. We also, work with schools for school age kids and support teachers as well coming from that space. We know that, we just try to create every product so that it's easy, turnkey, and simple to pick up and use, and hopefully can be supportive to you helping build these foundational emotional skills. And yeah, just on Slumberkins. And also, we have a really robust community on Facebook as well in the Slumberkins Social, where parents show up, support each other, and get into deeper conversations about more specific difficulties or just coming together to support this way of thinking and parenting and find connection. So we invite all of you to that as well on Facebook, Slumberkins Social.
Fantastic. And Dr. Lauren, let's close with you.
Sure. So 2 resources I would plug. One is there have been a lot of questions in the chat about specific life events, including childhood trauma. So one book I'd refer you to is mine, which is Big Conversations with Little Children. It talks about event by event, how you can possibly talk with that young children about that developmentally and what you can expect in terms of response. For the many of you that asked about where can I find the Bedtime Battles webinar, you can find all of our Parenting with Goddard resources on goddardschool.com. And then you can navigate to Parent Community in the upper right-hand corner. And there you'll find a plethora of blogs and articles, but also all of the past Parenting with Goddard webinars, such as this, which includes a series on behavior as communication. So things relating to physical aggression, bedtime battles, tantrums, etc. So I'd encourage you to spend some time exploring there.
Love it. Well, Dr. Lauren, Callie, Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. There was a lot packed into this session. So I'm sure many of our families watching today will be interested to go back and re-listen to parts of this. So again, we will be sending this back to you. It'll also be posted on our website and YouTube channel. I didn't forget, guys. I didn't forget. We are going to get to those giveaways before we go. So we're going to have 3 lucky winners are going to receive a Hammerhead Kin book set from our friends at Slumberkins, our Goddard book, Curious Blueberry, the Carousel Horse, which is a great introduction to inquiry-based learning, and then 5 additional books from our Wonder of Learning inquiry-based program that are aligned to today's discussion. You can see those on the screen right now, and we are going to try this technology, and I am going to see if we have our winners. So I am going to spin, and everybody who registered today is on this. And I think you guys are getting to see what I see right now. And let's see who our winners are. All right. We have Prakash, Eric, and Alana. I think you see your names on the screen, but don't worry. We are going to reach out to you via email after this to get your contact information and make sure we can get this great prize pack over to you. So again, that is a Hammerhead Kin and book set from Slumberkins, our Goddard book, Curious Blueberry, the Carousel Horse, and 5 additional books from our Wonder of Learning program. So congratulations to our winners. And that is a wrap. So we will be back with you with another webinar this fall. Keep an eye out on your email and our website for those details. In the meantime, have a great end of the summer, and we'll see you this fall. Thanks for joining us, everybody.